Welcome. Today we have the U.S. presidential candidates, Tom and Daniel, with us. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the invite, Newton.
Yes, absolutely.
Tom, so why don't you start first, introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm Tom Ross, and I am the Director of Sentient Rights Advocacy for the USTP. And I became an officer on my birthday in 2019, February 19th, which was a great present to get. And so, we went through the whole process in the 2019-2020 election, which we learned a lot. We learned what not to do in certain cases, I decided this time to throw my hat in the ring because I think this is less of a real political campaign. It's more of a marketing campaign for transhumanism. We need to seize back our narrative. And so that's part of the process in this campaign is, getting the words out there, getting the definitions that we throw around and many people don't have a reference for. And so, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. Ideally, I was hoping to get at least 5 or 6 other people to run in the primary as well, and then convince them to run as a team. I thought that would be pressworthy. And ideally, the people that would run as a team would have causes that they believed in that would align with cabinet seats. And so if we won, or whenever we win, we would be able to walk into the White House with our cabinet seats kind of in play. We would know what to do on day one. So that was the idea, because a big part of my campaign is about breaking the political paradigms that have never served us, like divide and conquer. And it was only me and Dan, so we've got a lot of work to do if we do get in to cover like 24 cabinet seats. But what we decided to do, rather than debate, which are just, where you have rehearsed sound bites and we're just mudslinging at one another. Instead, we wanted to do roundtables or problem-solving groups, because we have so many serious national and species existential threats facing us that we don't have time to win political points. We need to get busy, and we need to get busy quickly. And so a big part of my campaign is to invite the digital natives, the young people, into this campaign, and to give them a seat at this table. So that's kind of where I'm at with this up front, is bringing more young people in to break these political paradigms, to clear a path for some serious solutions.
Okay, and thank you. And Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, thanks. I ran before, actually, here in Thousand Oaks for city council. Plan to run again for a 4th time in 2024. I don't think there's rules about not being able to be a vice president candidate and a city council candidate, but yeah, again, I'm like Tom. I'm a proud co-scientist in this American experiment we call this democratic republic. I feel like running for office should be more like jury duty, because we kind of have the American experiment always on trial, and we're trying to continuously improve it. Most people don't know that Thomas Jefferson wrote in a letter that every generation should actually rewrite the Constitution. I don't think he was ready to go public with that idea, but like I think Tom might feel the same way, that it's unfair for one generation's ideas to bind the next generations. I'm a baby boomer, maybe on the cusp with Gen X, depending on which, born in 1960, and I almost feel like the baby boomer generation kind of dropped the ball. I sometimes jokingly say this is a baby boomer reparations tour that I'm on, but I had a really wonderful upbringing. My dad barely survived the Battle of the Bulge. He had about 80% of his intestines had to be removed from a bad mortar shell contact there in the Ardennes forest. And I was the youngest of 3 kids for a while, and lucky to have an older brother who was just like a transhumanist older brother. I mean, he introduced me to Buckminster Fuller and Arthur C. Clarke and Marshall McLuhan, and he had this idea for a movie called Time Friends that was going to be about humans contacting aliens, intelligence. So he always wanted to talk about his movie time, and sadly he passed away before he even reached 50. And I'm at actually 62, which is the same age my dad passed away at. So there's a little bit of urgency. I hope I'm not, bound by the genetic lottery. But yeah, I plan to actually make it at least to 2048, so I can see the opening of what I call the permatrail, which is a connection around the world, a corridor for human rights, which I actually call humane rights. I think we need an upgrade from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to a kind of transhumanist Declaration of Humane Rights, where we recognize our stakeholdership in Spaceship Earth and in the biosphere, and freedom of movement, freedom of association. I think so many things that government does can be disintermediated to voluntary institutions, faith institutions, educational institutions, neighborhood institutions. So I'm really excited. I've got a whole suite of ideas that I want to be bringing forth as part of this exciting candidacy. And that's probably enough about me. Next question.
For people who don't know what transhumanism is, okay, so Tom and Daniel, you're both for a chance. So make it as simple as possible so everybody can understand.
Yeah. Well, I always say that there's as many versions of transhumanism as there are people that identify as transhumanists. People come into this movement from so many different areas. I came into it because I managed to happen to read the Constitution and Bill of Rights of the USTP, and they have clauses in there that specifically speak to my cause, which is fighting child exploitation and human trafficking. And that's how I got into it. That's what brought me into it. And then I've also written what's hailed as the first novel for machine kind, for artificial intelligence. And so becoming the party's director of sentient rights advocacy fit really well with that point. But people come into it because they want to either become cyborgs, or they want to increase futurist ideas like vertical farming. There's so many reasons for people to identify as transhumanists. And so what I've been saying is we need to put the human back in transhuman. And I see that transhuman, really, we are the party that can transport people through this period of time, transport humans through this lacuna that we're going to be experiencing with AI automation displacement, with the technological and economic singularities that are coming at us quickly, and a lot quicker than most people expected. And so this campaign, we're going to be focusing on a lot of Daniel's ideas, which are very relevant right now, especially when people start to find that they're being laid off from their jobs, or they need to be self-sustaining. He's got a lot of great ideas, and we're going to be doing a lot of work towards sharing these ideas with human beings to help them get through this transition. I think there's going to be a major shift in the next 18 months, during our campaign. And so it's going to be really necessary to give people, real people in their neighborhoods, ideas of how to sustain, how to home farm, how to work with the system to provide for their families. And so that's going to be a big part of this. And by doing so, we will be putting that human back in transhuman, because the whole transhumanist narrative has gotten away from us, because a lot of people don't understand it. It's a whole genre on YouTube of the transhumanists have a dark agenda. We're paving the way for the Antichrist and all this stuff. It's because most people, if they don't understand something, they see it as a threat first. And so we're trying to seize back that narrative by putting out definitions, by explaining to people what we are doing. We are really putting the human back in transhuman, and we'll be doing that by showing how we can help as a campaign and as a party and as a movement, because I think it's going to be very important. So that's how I see it. I see it's a very broad term. I think transhuman is just a label we've put on something we already are. Without technology like clothing or shelter, we naked apes would be extinct within a generation or less. We are technology. We are our technology. That's how we survived. That's how we're at the top of the food chain now. And so, but just putting a label on it as transhuman is just a way to frame what we already are. And so that's going to be a big part of this campaign, is to give people practical solutions to face the displacement that's going to happen, but also working towards alleviating the fear of AI. We need to see AI as an ally. AI is going to take over all these menial tasks, all the jobs that 70% of the people hate. But so the onus is on us to be augmented by AI and understand how it is pushing us to remember how to be human again. And so it's changing everything. And just like any good friend or any good ally, it's pushing us to recognize our true power. That's a very convoluted answer to your question, but really simply, transhumanism is what we are. We are our technology. Without it, we would be extinct within a generation.
And Daniel, it's your turn.
Well, Tom, that was a great. It wasn't convoluted to me. It made sense. I for a long time was involved in the libertarian movement, and actually, libertarian and transhuman are both such broad categories. A libertarian is anyone who wants more self-governance and less other governance. And you could say a transhuman oriented person is someone who wants more control over how nature and technology affect them instead of less control. So, we've really allowed a lot of kooks to kind of pigeonhole the idea of transhumanism as, oh, we're all just like satanic soul-stealing conspiracy agents or something. And I'm a Christian transhumanist, or a cosmist, pantheist brand of transhumanist, which I think is actually closer to the original. The Christian Gnostics actually were far more pantheistic and cosmist. For those who don't know, Cosmism was a Russian branch of Christian Orthodoxy, you might say, but it believed that Jesus was representative of the first transhumanist. He was resurrecting the dead. He was promising an enlivened cosmos, a greater creation. And I think this is, I've actually got ordained in the Universal Life Church back when I was 19 years old, and they practice instant ordination by decree. If you want to be ordained, you can be ordained. Their two tenets are so simple and beautiful: do that which is right, and allow worship of God in your own way. There's lots of famous people: Sir Paul McCartney, Sir Richard Branson, that are also Universal Life Church ministers. So I think it is a very appropriate version of transhumanist faith. So we need to have this debate about what level of technology is appropriate to stay humane and to stay good stewards of this greater creation. And that's what I'm looking forward to being able to do in this campaign. I think there's lots of things where we haven't even begun to take advantage of yet. One is the location intelligence of geographic information systems, which can actually be deployed now down to the neighborhood scale, down to, there's a program called What 3 Words that identifies each 3 meter by 3 meter square on Earth with 3 dictionary random words into a database. There's a text-based program that you could run on a cell phone that's not active, which will let its radio talk to other cell phones. So I'm an amateur radio licensee. I have the extra class amateur call sign KK6VDR. And I actually see the amateur radio global community of 1 million plus people could kind of be stewards of this humane science-based portal for initiatives that go from the neighborhood level out to the solar system level. So I don't want to get too far out, but I kind of do. Yeah, we need to have an overview effect that we're on the verge of Kardashev level civilizationhood. Nikola Kardashev was a Russian astronomer who defined the levels of civilization progress by the amount of energy they are using. Right now, we're about sub level 1, which we haven't quite achieved the renewable energy usage of a planet. So, but hopefully we'll get there within a decade or two. And then the next level is you're using the output of a star, our local sun. I mean, the Dyson sphere concept was advanced to how we could advance to that level 2. Level 3 is galactic level energy usage for a civilization. I don't know if we'll get there in my lifetime unless we get time travel. But beyond that, you've got dimensional level energies. I think someone said if we harness the brain energy of the fifth dimension, which now it looks like we're theoretically on the verge of being able to do. So we might actually reach these Kardashev level increments for our civilization sooner than we think. And I hope it's a hybrid of cooperation and competition. You need cooperation to lay down the level playing field, and then you need competition so the best practices and policies and ideas will out. So that's my quick, hopefully not too convoluted take on what is transhumanism. And I love your book, by the way, Newton Lee, the Transhumanism Handbook. Just amazing overview. It's hardly recommend people reading that, and I'm looking forward to that being updated and kept in continuous print. Great compilation.
Thank you so much. What do you think? Is it possible to actually replace a human president with AI in the future?
Well, a couple of years ago, I was floating the idea of having an AI running mate, knowing that would just really force these conversations before we had to have these conversations. It would bring up ideas of, wow, personhood, but it was also a way to demonstrate how AI can really augment our campaigns and our governing. So I pushed that forward. Now Dan could be an AI. I have no idea. We've never met. So that was the idea a couple of years ago. But then again, we realized that we wouldn't. 35 years is the cutoff to be running for president, and so if a vice president, we wouldn't know that 35 years ago there was a sentient AI. But also it forced the conversation of what is sentience, what level do we need to consider an AI or an AGI a person? And so that was the whole point, was to force these ideas, knowing full well that I wouldn't become president, but it's really important to have these conversations now. I think there's always got to be a human involved. I use the example of, a pathologist. Now, an AI could give a really good diagnosis based on global and historical databases, and it can come up and can put in all the symptoms this patient is having, and it come up with a really good diagnosis of what this person has. But you're going to need a human there, a pathologist human, who, if it doesn't feel right to him, he might have to rerun it. And you got it, because we have these supercomputers in all of our skulls that can't be matched so far by an AI or an AGI. And so we need to focus on our intuition, on our psychic abilities. And these aren't woo-woo or magical thinking ideas. These are just things that we don't have a framework yet to understand them. And so I think right away we need to start training young people about these Jedi powers, if you will, how to hone in on our intuition, because all that is, it's the qualia, the stimuli that we are bringing in our subconscious every moment. And that just builds up. And so that's when you have a gut feeling, or you have an intuition about something, we're going to need a human being to be the shepherd of these AIs who are giving a pathological diagnosis. If it doesn't feel right, then they'll have to tweak it. So we're always going to have a human there. And so even if it's a president, I think similarly, an AI can help with global and historical data to help that president make a decision. But that president has got to be the human that makes the final decision. There are times when I thought, well, I would rather have an AI president than a human. I was dealing with some stuff, I think, at the time, but it's going to be so important, because we really have to focus on these supercomputers we all have in our skulls, that we need to focus on the skills and the talents, the human skills and talents that can't be coded or automated. And so, I think if there should be a AI advisor, and in our campaign, we have AI advisors. My campaign manager is an AI, and she is giving us really good tactics and really good ideas, and then helping us decide on who we need to hire first for this campaign to work. And but I will make the final decision. Dan will make the final decision of what we do with this information. But yeah, so I think there can be an AI advisor at least, but there has to be a human making that final decision based on his intuition or hers.
Daniel, do you agree?
Yeah, I think we'll be drafting some form of what I call the Keep Humaneness in the Loop Act. Not just keep a human in the loop, but keep humanity and humaneness and a stewardship perspective on greater creation. And I think with this, my view that we live in a loving, conscious creation of a universe, that everything is a positive potential learning and teaching experience. There's been the old philosophical debate. So how could God be all powerful and allow these evil things to exist? But like Lincoln said, I learned something from everyone. Mostly, I learned what not to do. And I think really what we call AI is kind of just statistical computation on steroids. It hasn't reached, as far as we can tell, that true human-like knowledge of, we're mortal beings and we have self-awareness and we have awareness of our mortality, and we have this kind of overview effect that extends both outward and inward and out towards infinity and down towards negative infinity. We haven't really seen that kind of super intelligence occur. But it's probably going to happen soon, because once we let these two, narrow intelligences design each other, it's going to come up with a whole new variation on what we would call consciousness, I suspect. And we are going to have to grant it rights and personhood. In fact, I think Tom was recently drafting a press release called Grant Personhood to AI, Grant Rights to AI. And apparently, I hadn't heard of this Chinese company that has an AI CEO, but there's nothing prohibiting lots of companies from doing that. I mean, Saudi Arabian Kingdom has recognized the AI bot Sophia and granted it citizenship. So that's kind of a historical precedent-setting thing for a government to do. And when you think about it, corporations are already kind of mini AIs. Again, I think maybe the term machine learning is more appropriate for what we call AI. And if underneath machine learning is just like hyper statistic computation on steroids. So we don't want to get too carried away with, over fantasizing about how powerful or how sentient these machine learning agencies are. But again, we have to be ready to be able to keep a human in the loop and keep humaneness in the loop as we experiment with this. The moratorium on the 6-month moratorium that all these tech leaders signed, I think that's kind of wishful thinking. I think maybe they're just trying to say, well, we tried to do something. So, it could be a token show of, realizing that we're on the verge of drastic disruptive change. But yeah, I don't know if I strayed too far off the question. But maybe we'll move on from there. I hope I answered the question.
Picking up on that press release I wrote, I'm saying we need to grant AI rights. And now my point is, it doesn't matter if AI or AGI ever achieves sentience or sapience, but by giving it legal rights, it will deter human developers from abusing it or mistreating it or programming it to hurt other humans. So it's kind of a leapfrog idea. If we give it rights, that will mean human developers can face serious consequences if they mistreat this AI. And so it doesn't really matter in that point whether it ever achieves sentience or sapience or whatever that is. But we give human rights, we give legal rights to humans that offer very little to society, just because they're human. Now, we know already that AI is contributing a lot towards society if we can rein it in. And by giving it rights will mean that nefarious developers will face consequences if they mistreat it.
There are a lot of homeless people, for example, especially in California, New York, and other places.
Yeah.
How do we solve that issue? Homelessness, for example.
Well, and that's the thing. We have so many platforms now that you can build a business on what you want to do, not what you have to do. And so really the onus is on us as human beings. We can't be in denial that AI automation is taking everything over. That's just going to happen. And so people will be displaced, but it means, I'm saying that it means, like any good friend or ally, it's showing us what we can really do. It's crazy to me that people are picketing that they're going to be losing their assembly line jobs. That just means that they're not going for or taking the onus on themselves to create a whole new second economy, a whole new economy based on what we want to do. And there are still some human skill sets that can't be automated and coded. There's fewer now, but I think it's really forcing us to hone in on these like intuitive powers that we have, and to remember what it means to be human. And so, so there's going to be a lot of displacement. There's going to be a really good people that are losing really good jobs, and it's sad, but it's going to happen. But what we can do, and even with there's so many opportunities for helping homeless people. We just got to get out of this sort of anthropocentric mindset we are in of selfishness and there's so many opportunities out there. And there's a lot of people that have great ideas, like Holsopple and Dan's got some great ideas, but there's ways to just give dignity back to these people who are houseless or homeless, because there's so many good people out there that if we have a financial incentive for people who have empty buildings to at least temporarily let them set up shop in there or have a living there, and then find some sort of a financial incentive for these landlords, and show that there's people in these homeless communities that have really good skills that can do art, to do all kinds of things. There's a lot of ideas out there to solve this problem, but we really need to kind of shift the whole mindset toward the dignity. I think unless you've had that experience, unless you've lost a job or you're facing not being able to make your mortgage, you don't really go there. It's difficult to think about these things until you experience them. And so there's so many ideas out there. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this with young people now, millennials and younger, that are also being displaced. They don't have what my generation, Gen X, had, or the baby boomers had. They don't have, you can't get a credit card easily. You can't get, all this help as easily as we could. And so there's a whole, I think a whole paradigm shift that's starting to emerge, where young people, the whole communes are coming up, the whole ideas. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this in the next year and a half, as people are being displaced. And but with these young people, they already have this sort of tribal communal hive mind emerging anyway. And so I think we're going to see a lot of solutions. Because we have to have these solutions now, and so we want to be on the forefront of helping that, giving them ideas, sharing with them how to create your own home garden, even if you're in an apartment. Dan's got a lot of great ideas toward this end too. But there's I think there's a whole shift that's occurring that has to occur, and it'll be driven by young people, what I call digital dignitaries. These are the digital natives that are of this age. And so we're trying to bring them to the table for this campaign, and to see that, to really listen hard to young people, what they need. Because as a Gen X, I had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. So it takes me a couple of seconds to realize, if somebody asks me a question, how long will it take me to walk to the library, before I realize, oh yeah, there's Google. These young people have these supercomputers in their pockets, and there's a confidence that comes with knowing that they can get the answer to anything. And especially now with ChatGTP, they don't have to worry about how to format something or make sure the spelling is correct. There's a lot of things are going to change very rapidly, and they already are. And we just have to embrace that. And COVID really accelerated a lot of these trends, telecommuting, all of the stuff that now everybody knows how to Zoom. When a couple of years ago, nobody understood that, so it's really accelerated how we work.
Right. And Daniel, going back to homeless situation in California. So what do you think can be done, sooner rather than later?
Well, Spaceship Earth is really our home, and I think what we need to do is track back our property theories. We have taken a lot of things that should have been commonwealths in nature because they weren't created by the people, and just because they had superior force of arms or the ability to create a monopolistic situation over certain properties, they were able to charge rent. Rent-seeking behavior is one of the flaws in so-called capitalism. I think there's three kinds of value. There's individually created value, there's community created value, and there's nature created value. And if we just charged a location fee on the nature created value, we could totally get rid of 99% of the inequality in the current market systems. And this is already being explored by things like community development trusts, where people buy areas of land voluntarily, and then they create kind of societies by contract. The Nature Conservancy has kept a lot of areas of the earth wild just by buying them up and saying, we're going to have a proviso that this gets to be kept wild. And, we can, there's something called the Lockean proviso, which I think, the libertarian movement kind of got away from one of their founders, John Locke. And he said, you can only privatize nature where there is enough and as good left in common for others. And even Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize winning economist, said, the Henry George single tax or location fee for land was the least bad tax, is what he said. So this would actually fund all of the police and courts and the due process things that keep societies a level playing field. And then we're going to need something like this as we move out into the solar system, because if you were building a Dyson sphere, there's only one location that receives full sunlight from the local star. Once you put up a solar panel or something to get that energy, the guy behind you is out of luck. He's in shade now. So the same applies to nature. If you're using something that's a limited resource that you didn't create, that should be treated as a commonwealth. And you could have annual eBay type auctions for locations. I mean, there's all kinds of creative ways to take the coercion out of property. So, the game Monopoly, in fact, was originally invented by a student of Henry George, and it was called the landlord's game. And it was a game to show, oh, look, it's kind of unfair for people to monopolize a limited commonwealth and use it for their own unequal benefit. So I think just following these land value tax or location fee principles for things that are in nature. There's even an acronym, EARN, equal access to the resources of nature. And the idea is you keep what you make, but you pay for what you take. And you don't tax goods, you tax bads. Goods are things that people create through their merit and their labor. And we want to encourage that. We don't want to tax that. So yeah, really just by re-envisioning these fundamental libertarian property ideas, we can see that property rights and human rights arise in a mutual kind of fashion that has to be done in a commonwealth kind of context. And that would probably end homelessness. Aside from other things, like I think you could communities should have these large-scale 3D printers where they could use in situ materials to print hurricane-proof and earthquake-proof shelters. I mean, there's lots of creative solutions to the shelter problem, but I think the main one is a Commonwealth view of natural property rights from nature as a location fee kind of based system.
Very interesting idea. Well, thank you. And we've covered quite a bit today about your view on transhumanism and the US economy and so on. We will be back for more, obviously, and I'm going to talk to you, on other issues. Okay, so thank you again for being with us, and we will be in touch.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Nitin.
Okay, bye-bye.